And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Top Dog Talk podcast, episode number 55. We are getting up there over halfway to episode 100, which is going to be another great occasion once we get there. Hey, maybe we bring back a little four-wide action. Hey, maybe we go out there and get a former Georgia player, a superstar in his own right, to bring him on the show and talk about it for episode 100. But with that being said, real quick, that is Dan Kiley, the co-host of the Top Dog Talk podcast and the Four Wide Cop podcast. I'm Harris Serino, guys. Before we get into the show and before I ask Dan how his day is doing, as we always do, I do want to give a little shout out to a new show we got going on over with the Classic City Sports Podcast. Jeremiah Stoddard and Jonathan Williams. We, Dan and myself, launched the Four Wide podcast with them, discussing a little bit of everything, not just Georgia sports, but sports as a whole. We're talking college football, we're talking Braves baseball, we're talking Falcons, NFL, NBA, you name it. In sports, we are talking about it, guys. It is up. The channel is live. You can go find the newest episode, which was streamed live at 8 o'clock every Monday. Make sure to be there to go find it over there at the Four Wide Podcast. And it's also out on some podcasting platforms. We are still working on getting it distributed everywhere else. But in the meantime, we will keep you updated on when we get on iTunes and all that. Make sure to check it out. Dan, how is it going this Tuesday evening?
It is going. I was excited to get going, and we knocked some rust off. We were able to get the Four Wide yesterday and start our week off right. It is game week. And I'm really excited for this show. I'm excited for the season. I am ready. Let's go.
Absolutely. Hello to Jeremiah Stoddard, Jonathan Williams, and the DGD podcast, Robert Reynolds. As I said earlier, Classic City Sports Podcast, Jeremiah and Jonathan. And then you got the DGD podcast with Robert Reynolds. Go check those guys out. They support us and we support them. But with that, let's get directly into the hot topic of today's episode. We got three, Dan. It's going to be three damn good ones, I hope. First off, Dan, should coaches have to release a week one depth chart?
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on this one. I mean, we have to admit that this stuff is all about gambling, right? The gamblers want to know who's playing whatever. And if you just follow the money, you'll understand why. But I think coaches should have to put out a depth chart. I think they should have to clearly put out a depth chart before every single or especially before week one when nobody has film or anything like that. I think it just levels the playing ground for everybody because I don't know. I get annoyed when coaches do the whole I'm not going to tell you who's going to play quarterback and blah, blah, blah. It's for the most part, we already know who's going to play. But just go ahead and do it. I mean, if you're going to ask them to do it, then they need to do it. I think it's kind of crap that some teams do and some teams don't.
Absolutely. My opinion really is, as a member of the media and over at sidogsdaily.com, which you should go check out. Jonathan and Jeremiah, both coworkers over there, do some great content over there as well. For us, it makes a lot of sense to have that week one depth chart. But, the downside of that would be, we can't go out here and publish a projected depth chart for no reason. Good comment there, Robert. I really do appreciate that one. But yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat here. I think, coaches should release a week one depth chart, but I do understand the skepticism and kind of no, I don't want to do that because, the coach across the sideline, well, they can kind of take a look, say, oh, if you have a QB battle and you don't want to, you don't want to put out there who your QB is, well, then that's all out the window. But as we have seen, coaches have gotten a lot smarter when it comes to putting out depth charts. You go look at a Georgia depth chart from last season. When you look at the quarterback in those times of when we didn't know whether JT Daniels or Stetson Bennett was going to be the starter back then, they would put Stetson Bennett or JT Daniels as a way of not really giving away their game plan, but more of, hey, it could be either one. So they've gotten smarter. So at the end of the day, I would love it as a media member. Like Dan said, Vegas would love it because that would help them with some odds and probably would help you make some more money. But second question, Dan, kind of relating to this. Should coaches have to release a injury report?
Again, it goes back to Vegas. Vegas wants those out so that the gambling money is right. But I think it's ridiculous because if you're going to require them to do it, which is what they do, right? But you have some coaches who just make up shit. I mean, Bill Belichick is the most famous in the world, or infamous, should I say, where He puts all of his players on the injury report. I mean, it's ridiculous. So my whole thing with the depth chart and the injury report is, if you're going to do it, make it uniform. If you're going to require it, then make sure that they do it correctly. And if they don't, then fine them, suspend them, whatever the case may be. And that maybe that's extreme. I don't know, but if you're not going to hold them to it, then don't make them do it. But like I said, over and over again, if you follow the money, it's all about Vegas. This is all started in Vegas because it doesn't really add a benefit. Like Kirby Smart said in his press conference when they said, what are you thinking about them not announcing the quarterback? Because I already know who the quarterback is. So the coaches know, but it is a little bit ridiculous.
Absolutely. It's all ridiculous. I think, once again, it all goes back to Vegas and the media. Media members would love an injury report just because that's content right there. Instead of having to go through all these different sources to figure out who's injured, who's not, have to play games with some of these sources, as kind of going through the weeds of, hey, is he actually injured or are you lying to me? Trying to play it down. I would love an injury report. But I also see there is a legal side of things with HIPAA and all that. A federal law that says you can't really put out those, health and all those safety information out there into the world. So I do see why it's probably not a thing that they are doing in college football. And hey, maybe they do it in the NFL. I don't really know because I don't pay attention to the NFL that closely. But once again, it could go back to federal laws as to that. And for our last hot topic of the day, Dan, it is something, it's not really a question based. Well, it is kind of a question, but it's more of just a conversation that me and you wanted to have because we talked about it on the phone today, trying to come up with some of these hot topics because, no, we're not picking these a week in advance. We want to know what's hot on our mind right here, right now, when it comes showtime. What are we doing, Dan, with these game predictions and these season predictions on TV? You look at College Game Day, the best pregame show of any college sport, of all college sports, except the only exception I would make for all of sports is the NBA on TNT pregame show is elite. There is ESPN College Game Day, and there is NBA on TNT. Ernie Johnson, Shaq, Kenny Smith, all those guys, Charles Barkley, those are my top two tiers. But anyways, what are we doing? You turned on ESPN Game Day yesterday, Dan, and Desmond Howard is putting out his top 4 playoff predictions. And all 4 of them are wild cards to make it. Yes, Texas A&M and Michigan have the highest chance to make the playoffs out of all those 4. There was Texas A&M, Michigan, Pittsburgh, and Baylor. I see Baylor. Baylor's a close third. Michigan's probably number 1. I would say, and putting it in likeliest terms of who's more likely to make it, I would say Michigan's 1, A&M's 2, Baylor's 3rd. But Pitt? Who does Pitt have, Dan? They lost Kenny Pickett. They lost Jordan Addison. They got Keaton Slovis. So what are we doing, Dan?
No, it's getting ridiculous. It's getting to the point where it's all clicks driven and attention driven. And we've gotten away from what the intent was. The intent was that everybody was supposed to weigh in, give their honest opinions. And, so you go into the day kind of having a feeling of what's going to happen or whatever. But it's gotten to the point where these people are more concerned about getting attention than they are anything else. And, when you see these types of things now, it's almost like why are we even taking the time to air these and to give any credence to these opinions? Because there's no way on earth that they actually believe them. Now, do I believe that Desmond Howard thinks that Michigan can get in the Final Four? I do, because that's his school and he's going to believe it no matter what. And, to say that Michigan was going to make the Final Four, that's not outlandish. Okay. That's not going crazy. But to say that Baylor's going to get in there, that's ridiculous. To say Pittsburgh's going to get in there, that's ridiculous. To say A&M is going to get there over Georgia and Alabama, that's comical. And there's no way he believes it. He's just wanting attention. Nobody else had a Final Four like that. But to your point, these pick segments are just getting out of control, and they're just getting silly and laughable, and they don't add value anymore. And when I look at something as when I spend my time on something, is it valuable? Does it add value? Do I enjoy watching it? Do I get information out of it? And if the answer is a resounding no, then you just don't watch it anymore. And I can't tell you the last time that I watched College Game Day because, in such a sad way, I love Lee Corso, and I love everything he's done for college football. And to be completely honest, he made that show when it first started. It's him and Kirk Herbstreit, and nobody in the world knew who Kirk Herbstreit was. He was some backup quarterback from Ohio State who didn't do anything in his career, who just happened to look good. But then Lee Corso made it. But it's gotten to the point now where they're just rolling him out there, and the poor guy can't get through a sentence, and he does. Yeah, nothing he's saying is making sense. I don't know. It's gotten out of hand, and it's just unnecessary, to be completely honest.
Yeah, it is. As much as I love Lee Corso and the headgear picks, heck, we even have on SI Talk Today, we even have a article dedicated to Lee Corso's headgear pick when it comes to picking Georgia in those big games. You know, that is something, when you think of college football, Lee Corso comes to mind just because of those headgear picks. I've grown up seeing Lee Corso on TV, and it is tough to see, him out there. And yes, I'm sure he wants to be on that show as long as possible, but it is tough to see how he's kind of having to be split from the group and the rest of them. But getting back to the point I wanted to make, kind of something you went off of here, talking about how, Desmond Howard, it seems like is doing these picks off of clicks and what gains interest, whether it's, what gains attention, whether it's bad or good, whether it's haters or it's supporters. There is a stark contrast to being like Desmond Howard, where it's like, okay, yeah, Michigan has a good chance, but I think it's more of you're putting him in there because that's your school. When you compare it to David Pollock's a very realistic analyst when it comes to what he's done at ESPN. I think some people criticize him for being a little too down the middle, or maybe kind of leaning on the side of, hey, I want to be as far away from a homer as possible. David Pollock didn't even put Georgia in his top 4. If I remember correctly, he had Georgia going into the national championship last year. That was his top 4 prediction. Georgia and Alabama were in there. But he had Georgia losing the SEC championship game, and he looks like a damn genius because of it, Dan. So I don't know. There's a stark contrast between those two. You have the more outlandish type takes with Desmond Howard, and then the more conservative, a lot more realistic predictions of a David Pollock and a Kirk Herbstreit. So I definitely, it's something worth looking at, and also something to think. Like, where do we draw the line? What happened to the days of putting a prediction out there and actually it meaning something to you? Not just something that was scripted and in order to create controversy. Good television is all about creating controversy now, Dan. And I think it's getting in the way of stuff like this. So I hope it changes. It probably won't, because I think these shows are evolving with the times. That's why College Game Day is still as good as it's always been, in my opinion. But with that is going to end our hot topic segment of the week. Guys, if you ever, and I mean ever, have a hot topic for us to discuss, put it down in the comments, DM us. You can reach out to us on Twitter. Anything you follow us on, reach out with hot topic suggestions. And with that being said, Dan, I want to hit it over to you for your rant of the week.
So my rant of the week is going to be on the preseason polls. Now, listen, they do have some value, and that value being something to talk about during talking season, right? They put all these teams out there in the top 25, but I get a little bit frustrated because sometimes, what are we basing these rankings on exactly? Like, what do we actually know about a lot of these teams, especially in today's climate with the amount of movement these teams have? It's very difficult to predict exactly what these teams are going to be. And with the preseason rankings, if you don't get a favorable ranking, typically it can bury you. It's very difficult to go from unranked to playing in the Final Four. Michigan was the first team to go from unranked into the unranked in the preseason polls into the finals since the this new format that we're under. So Harrison did a little research for me, and I appreciate that. So from 2014 to 2021, the AP number 1 team has made the college football playoffs 7 times. So if you talk about a 7-year stretch, they've made it all 7 times. So that's pretty impressive, right? I guess that works. But if you think about it, the top 4 teams typically are really no-brainers. But it's those teams outside the top 4 and top 5. It's almost like the participation trophy to me, is that they just want to put these teams in there to start driving up conversation and draw attention to the games. And I think that this entire preseason poll thing is to drive media ratings and to get people to watch these games, because that's why they'll put like a Utah up there, or they'll put a Coastal Carolina in the top 10. who are we fooling? Okay, like last year, Coastal Carolina was a top 10 team to start the preseason. I dare I say top 7. I don't remember exactly where they were, but if you put those teams up against Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, any one of the, well, maybe not Clemson last year, that's a bad example, but they would have got boat raced by any one of those teams. So with the AP poll, that poll doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't even mean anything. So what's the point exactly? And I'm not 100% sure. And I'm going to the way of we've got to do away with all these polls that don't mean anything. Let's just have one poll that means something. Because if you look, thank God that we're into a playoff era now where we actually play for something. Because if you think back to the days when there were 4 or 5 different polls and you could have 3 different national champions. That's happened before, like in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Like you have some teams that claim like 25 national championships, and they really only have like 2 or 3. But the
I believe
I can't
Georgia and
remember.
Ohio State share a championship or have a dispute over one.
Yeah, they
back
do.
in the 1940s.
It's silly. I mean, it's like the Bill's Butcher Shop has a poll, and they rated me number 1, so I'm a national championship. I mean, what in the UCF is going on?
That is the first time I've heard what in the UCF is going on, Dan. I need to clip that. We're clipping that. Harrison, when you listen to this back, clip that one because we're putting that on Twitter. But, going off of kind of what you said, it's all ratings based, Dan. And you know what? Maybe not a bold prediction, but I got a prediction for you, Dan. Next Monday, when we check in and those AP poll rankings drop, Dan, I will bet money that the University of Texas is a ranked team next week. You know why, Dan? Because week 2, they play Alabama at home in Austin. What better way to drive up ratings for that game where everyone knows Alabama is going to be a heavy favorite? If Ohio State's a 17-point favorite on Notre Dame, just imagine what Alabama is going to be on Texas. I mean, it's going to be outrageous. I can't wait to see that Vegas number. So I'm putting out there, Texas is going to be a ranked team. I don't know who they play week 1. Probably because they're playing nobody or someone they're going to whoop. But, will it surprise anyone if they are ranked in the top 25 by next week, after this week?
No, it won't. And, Texas drives, there is a large section of this country that really does like Texas, whether we want to agree that exists or not. They have a big fan base. And, like everybody in the comment section saying the same thing. It's all about driving that television product and the content. So you're right. And then Ewers being the quarterback at Texas is a lightning rod, and he's going to get so much coverage.
Absolutely. As Jeremiah said, the Kombucha Cowboy was one of the first NIL deals he announced. One of the first NIL deals that he announced after foregoing his senior year of high school. And, really for him, I can't say it wasn't a bad decision because I know everyone's going to get on his butt about, leaving his high school to go sit on the bench at Ohio State. But it means more than that. That extra year of experience means more than just sitting on the bench at Ohio State because he's getting practice reps, guys. That's what the casuals don't see. Is because if you don't play, that doesn't mean you're not doing anything. You're getting all those practice reps. You're getting better. So I think it's going to pay off for him in the end. And hey, he's not going to get thrown to the fire. He wasn't thrown to the fire in year 1 like a JT Daniels was at USC. That's the red lining for Quinn Ewers. But with that being said, we are almost 20 minutes into the show. I am getting roasted in the chat right now, thanks to Robert Reynolds, but it is okay. We will go through it. Robert, I do not have a first day of school picture, and my parents were not happy about that one, for one. So with that being said, let's preview Georgia, Oregon, because summoning my Bruce Buffer voice, it's time, baby. Football is back. Week 1 football is back. No more of the shenanigans of week 0. No more trying to make it a bigger deal than it actually is. Number 3 Georgia, number 11 Oregon will meet in downtown Atlanta inside Mercedes-Benz Stadium for what looks to be potentially a great game. Now, Vegas doesn't think so. Vegas thinks it's going to be a 17-point Georgia win, or at least a 17-point Georgia win. Georgia is the overwhelming favorite at this point, and that line could end up moving a little bit more. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if it does move down. But, Dan, let's talk about some of the storylines real quick here. There is one major storyline here, and it's Kirby Smart versus Dan Lanning. As we all know, Lanning spent 4 years on the staff as the outside linebackers coach. 3 years as the defensive coordinator because he was promoted after Mel Tucker left for the head coaching job then at Colorado. Did an exceptional job. There's no taking that away from him. Developed some top talent, top level edge rushing talent, put him off to the NFL. Azeez Ojulari being one of them. Made Georgia's defense fun to watch at times. And really, it was unpredictable at points last year. I mean, I've never enjoyed watching defense as much as I did when Dan Lanning and really the 3 years that he was running the show. He improved Georgia in so many ways. You also got to give credit to Glenn Schumann, the co-defense coordinator, something people don't talk about enough. It's not really that much turnover at the coordinating position. Glenn Schumann was a part of the process even when Dan Lanning was promoted. And Dan's going to get to that in a minute. But Dan, the big thing that everyone's talking about, the national media, the casuals, is the old quote-unquote familiarity. That's when Oregon fans talk about why they're going to upset Georgia, number 3 Georgia, is familiarity. And you brought up a good point yesterday on the 4Y podcast, and I want you to reiterate, what do you think about this whole familiarity storyline that is being built up?
Well, to quote the great Apollo Creed, look, Stalin, you may be great, but I've taught you everything you know, not everything I know. And, there's a lot of truth to that where you could teach somebody something and they can become great on their own, but there's a reason why you were great before. Okay. And when I see, and this is what I talked about last night, when I see people say, Georgia's suffering a loss with Dan Lanning leaving. Now, listen, would we love to have him? Of course we would love to have him, but he's gone now. But it's almost like we're putting our head in the sand and saying that he was in an isolated room coaching this defense and nobody else was paying attention to what the hell was going on. And I mean, that's what I said last night. And I think that's true because you've got Kirby, you've got Muschamp, who didn't have a great success as a head coach, but he's a tremendous coordinator. And then you have Schumann, who by all accounts is great at what he does. So I think, yes, is there going to be some familiarity? Of course, there's going to be a little bit of familiarity, but do you not think that Kirby, Muschamp, and Schumann can come up with something on their own to a little wrinkle or a different design or something that they could have been practicing, I don't know, for the last 4 or 5 months to give them a different look? I mean, to say that couldn't happen is just ignorant. Now, do I think they're going to do something like they did in the SEC championship game against Alabama where they try to do something completely different? No, I think that ship has sailed, and I don't think we're going to see anything like that again. But then something else that Kirby brought up during this press conference and I thought resonated with me, and I'm sure it resonated with most of you who've had the chance to hear it, is he said it's not about X's and O's. It's about the Jimmies and Joes. It's about the players. He said the team with the better players is going to win. And I truly believe that Georgia has the better players. So, if you're talking about matchups and stuff like that, like Dan Lanning could be the greatest coordinator in the history of the world. He can come up with the greatest plan in the world, but it's about execution. Do you have the talent to implement and to execute what you're trying to put in? So what if you think what Todd Monken's going to run? Do you have the ability to stop it? And my answer to that is I don't think they do. Now, will they eventually down the road? That's to be seen. But as for Saturday, the familiarity thing, I agree. There's probably a degree of it. Kirby even said, I'm sure there's a degree of it. But at the end of the day, it comes down to who has better players and who executes better. And I believe Georgia is positioned to do just that.
Exactly. And, really what's also not being talked about is there's going to be a lot of familiarity with, from Georgia's side of things. Georgia's going to know Bo Nix, who many assume and many think they know. I'm sure Kirby Smart's one of them, as, his press conference said the other day. They know what Bo Nix is. They've seen Bo Nix before. They know how to beat Bo Nix. They've done it 3 times in the past. And also, I do want to shout out a couple of tweets. Jonathan Williams and Jeremiah Stoddard, our co-hosts over at the 4Y podcast, put out some banger tweets over there about Bo Nix and how he's fared against Georgia, and also comparing Bo Nix and Stetson Bennett against top 15 teams. Go find them over at Twitter at the Stodfather and at Dr._JWill. But anyways, what's not being talked about is, Dan, you mentioned it last night, Georgia possibly may have upgraded a little bit at defensive coordinator. Not a slight to Dan Lanning. They added Will Muschamp, Dan. And Will Muschamp was a hell of a coordinator, as you said in your own right, in his own right last night. He will add a lot to this Georgia defense. He already added a little bit last year, just being on staff. There's that extra source of knowledge. There's probably no person on this staff. There's no two people on this staff that Kirby Smart trusts more than Will Muschamp and Glenn Schumann. Glenn Schumann has been his right-hand man for years now. They've been together since their days at Alabama. He was one of the first people Kirby Smart brought over to Georgia when Kirby Smart got the head coaching job in Athens. And then you look, fast forward a few years down the road, former fellow teammate at the University of Georgia, Will Muschamp, brought on to staff after not really panning out as a head coach. And now, after 1 year, he's risen up to the cream of the crop, and he's at the top of this, coaching staff as a co-defensive coordinator. And Dan, really, it's not shocking at all. Good coaches are going to be well liked by their players. And real quick, I didn't put this on the show notes, but I had this in mind. There is one clip that is going around the internet, about Will Muschamp. And it was from his time at Texas. I'm gonna share my screen to put out that clip real quick to show everybody, because I'm sure Dan's seen it. We've all seen it at this point. If you haven't, this will be your first look at it. Here is a video of Will Muschamp at his time at Texas.
Let's go. Everybody eyes up here. Look, they're getting in this set right here, right? And they're running zone G and they're running Y. We call it chop. We got to get there. The buck has got to get there and get flat. Corner's got to come through. The safety fits outside. Will's got to be here. Everybody see that? Gap control. Everybody just do your job. Let's stand up.
I mean, who doesn't want that as their coach? That fire, that intensity, that energy. Kaylee Ringo said he brings the same energy every day on Twitter. Dan, I want your thoughts.
I mean, the man is passionate, and that's one thing that's why it's called Coach Boom. He didn't get a name for no reason. It's Coach Boom. The guy brings the passion. He brings the fire. And, to me, one of the things that I've started to pay attention to with him is I think sometimes that passion got away from him a little bit, especially when he was a head coach. It's like you don't have the ability to fly off the handle as a head coach. You have to be under control all the time. And I think you've seen that maturity out of Kirby Smart as well, where he doesn't lose his cool as much as he used to when he first started on the job. But I think as a defensive coordinator, you're allowed to be a little bit more passionate. And I think that's right where his sweet spot is. I heard a really, really smart person a long time ago say that not everybody is built to be a head coach. And some people are built to be a defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, and that's okay. And I think Will Muschamp is one of those guys who was preordained to be a dominant defensive coordinator. And that is his sweet spot. That's right where he needs to be. And I'm glad he's on our side. I'll be completely honest.
Absolutely. He's going to make this defense better. Him and Glenn Schumann, I think, are going – the core identity of Georgia's defense will not change. It will be the same. They're going to be fast, and they're going to be physical. Whether or not they're a man-to-man football team or a zone football team, that may change a little bit here and there, but they have most of the same personnel, especially on that back end of their defense, return a lot of starters. I don't expect that to change, but – moving on from the storyline aspect of things, I'm not one for storylines. I'm more about, let's talk some football and why, or give some keys to victory, if we will, Dan. First off, real quick, we got the win, the one-on-ones on the outside. And yes, it's cliche, but we want to, you want to see Georgia be explosive. And most importantly, everyone's been dying for this. We want to see them take some shots. I mean, you got some talent at receiver. You got some talent at tight ends. Use them. Let's get aggressive early. Todd Monken loves to be aggressive, loves to throw the ball. We all know that. Let him do it. Dan, you said last night you feel like the leash is coming off, and you feel like he's going to, he has more, Kirby has more trust in him.
I do. And the other thing is I think that he has more trust in the players as well. I didn't mention that last night, but I think Todd Monken is starting to believe in the group that he's got. He's had them in their system for quite a while. He's becoming more familiar with their talents and what they're capable of. And I think to reiterate what I said last night, I think Kirby is starting to trust him and giving him a little bit more leeway than maybe he had early on in his stay here at Georgia. And I think that's extremely important for multiple reasons, but one of them is to keep him here, right? if Tom Monken is a guy that you would like to have here for about 10 years or so, and I think as Georgia fans, we would be silly not to want that to happen. But the only way that's going to happen is you've got to give him the leeway to coach his own way and to do his own thing. And I think Kirby is more comfortable with him now. And I think he knows that he is protecting the program. And I think that was one of the things that a lot of people criticized Kirby about early in his role as head coach, is that it seemed like he had a grip in his hands on everything. And I think he's starting to get comfortable with Monken enough to let him do whatever he thinks he needs to do to be successful. And one of the things that we keep hearing is that, Oregon's secondary may not be a strong point of their football team, whereas their linebacking core is, that we might be able to take some shots. And, you want to lighten that box to open up the running game. So I think there's a really good opportunity for Georgia to take some shots. And listen, taking shots doesn't always mean throwing the 9 and just going down the field. I mean, we got some skinny posts, you got some drag routes, dig routes, stuff across the middle, run something deep, run something underneath it, get our playmakers open in space. There's a lot of different ways. Wheel routes out of the backfield. I mean, we've got some running backs that can catch the football. There's a lot of different ways. And I love the way that he used James Cook last year. And Kenny McIntosh is going to have those opportunities. Kendall Milton's going to be able to run the ball, hopefully with light boxes, because they're going to be challenging people downfield. So yeah, the one-on-ones on the outside, test them out early, see what they've got. And, it always comes back to Stetson Bennett, right?
Absolutely. And really, speaking of how Monken has used James Cook, if you really have any questions or doubts or concerns about the job that Tom Monken has done, all you need to do is go back and watch how Georgia used James Cook in 2019 and 2018 and go compare it to how Tom Monken's used him. A lot of the things that Tom Monken's doing with him now are things people have been wanting for years. Whereas in years past, under James Cole and Jim Chaney, when James Cook would get the ball, it was just off a little jet sweep. You wouldn't see him line up out wide very often, if at all. He wasn't he wasn't creating the same explosive plays that he was the last 2 years under Todd Monken. If you have any doubt, go watch that. And the next key, we're gonna go through them at not a quick pace, but we will get through this one a lot quicker than the last one, because this is just something I noticed when watching, some film, watching the tape over the last few days. Is you go back and you watch the SEC championship game, Dan. It was a game where Georgia lost ultimately, and you dive into it a little bit deeper. I look at how many plays Georgia ran offensively. Georgia ran around 84 plays on offense in this championship game. And obviously there's multiple factors in that. You were down in that game. You came out in the second half down. I think it was around two-score game because of some bad clock management and a ill-timed, really quick touchdown on the screen to Ladd McConkey right before half, giving Alabama the chance to drive down the field and go up 2 scores. So you're playing at a fast pace. You're throwing the football around the yard. You're really getting away from the run game, even though it was working for you, but you were down. So you ran 84 plays. You come back, you play them the second time in the national championship game. You ran around 64 plays that game. Slower pace, driving at will, doing what you want. You're playing your football. You're judging the tempo. You're setting the tone. So the big key, I think, in my mind, this goes along with another key, is Georgia needs to run around 50 to 65 plays on offense to win this game. I think that is the big key. That's what we want to see. If you run more than that, then to me, that indicates you're in a shootout or you're coming from behind. And I think those are two things Georgia doesn't want to do, especially with a really, really green defense, a really young defense. You don't want to get into a shootout. And, for the most part, Georgia's offense, at least in past years, isn't built to win shootouts.
No, I agree with your sentiment, but I think as opposed to putting an actual number on the amount of plays, what I would say is I want Georgia to dictate pace. And if they want to go fast, that's fine. But if they don't, that's fine also. But I want Georgia to be the one to dictate the pace. And I felt like in the Alabama SEC championship game, Alabama dictated pace. And the reason that Georgia had so many plays is because Alabama scored so quickly. And it took Georgia every bit, just grinding out play after play after play. And we weren't really going anywhere. So sometimes the number of plays you have can be misleading, because if you think about it, if you're running 84 plays, you're not scoring that many touchdowns, because if you're scoring touchdowns, you're not going to run as many plays. So like the number of plays to me doesn't really affect the game. It's the way that Georgia's able to control the pace, and as long as Georgia's able to do what they want to do when they want to do it, I think those plays will come out in the right number, and maybe they are in that 50 to 60 range that you're talking about, that sweet spot. But I don't see a scenario where there's Georgia's running 80 something plays and Oregon's running 80 something plays. I mean, I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I really think Georgia's going to, like you said, they're going to take the pace. And I don't think their pace is going to be high tempo. Now, maybe there's a flaw in that defense that they see. Hey, when we go high tempo, they can't handle it. So really, next few keys, because I do want to get to the rest of what we got planned. Dominate the line of scrimmage. Oregon has one of the most experienced offensive lines in the country. If you want to see more on that, you can go check out Brooks Austin at patreon.com/Brooks Austin. One free shout out per show. You got to make Oregon one-dimensional. You got to stop the run. That is one thing that we want to see from this defense. How do they hold up against the run? In years past, you had Jordan Davis. You had 3 exceptionally smart, intelligent linebackers, incredibly fast linebackers, might I add. They're as athletic freaks as you can be. Can Georgia do the same? Can you keep them one-dimensional? Can you take away the run and make them focus on the pass? Because I really think your strong suit on this defense is the defense, is the back end of that defense. That's your strength. You want to see them throw the ball. So, Dan, I'm going to hit it over to you for kind of what we want to see on offense for Georgia.
Well, before I get to that, I wanted to touch on Georgia controlling the line of scrimmage, both lines of scrimmage. Oregon returns the most experienced offensive line in all of college football, and that is going to be a real challenge for Georgia. We talked about their secondary, maybe not as experienced in defensively and all that stuff, but their offensive line is a real strength. And Georgia is breaking in some new defensive linemen. Obviously, Jalen Carter, not one of those, but controlling their offensive line and stopping the run and making them one-dimensional is huge, in my opinion. As far as what we're looking for out of Georgia's offense is multiplicity. The opportunity to do a lot of different things, using tight ends in a different way that we've seen them in the past, factoring them into the wide receiver category. I know Rudes has been the biggest advocate of our tight ends are our wide receivers, and I get it. And he's right to the extent that Brock Bowers and Eric Gilbert are going to be lined up on the outside a lot more than traditional tight ends. And listen, Washington, in my opinion, is an absolute freak of nature. And I've said it multiple times. Anybody that's watched the show knows that I don't understand why he's not more of a red zone target. I mean, the guy is like 7'9" and weighs like 500 pounds and runs like a 4.40. I mean, the guy is a freak of nature. And I mean, anywhere near the 10-yard line, it's like just throw a jump ball up there and he'll catch it just standing still. The guy's a giant. So I really want to see Washington be more of a factor if we get in close than he has been in years past. I love those jumbo packages that the Dogs run inside the 10 with their bringing in some of their big defensive linemen. Just the multiplicity. And we've talked about it so many different times already. We talked about it on 4 Wide last night with the guys. Is they have so many mouths to feed. I don't know how they're going to keep everybody happy, but hell, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I'm put out on Twitter today, or kind of I was thinking in my mind. I think I may have sent it. I put out a tweet today talking about, hey, we've all been dreaming about seeing those tight ends out in the field for the last few months, but now that it's getting closer and closer to reality, coming to a reality, the excitement's building. And it's hit its peak right now. Once we hit Saturday night, or Saturday afternoon, I should say, it's going to be great to watch. And I expect Georgia's going to run a lot of tight end personnel because that's their strength. Tom Monken knows what is his strength and what is his weaknesses, and usually tries to avoid them, as all good coordinators should. So I'm really excited to see those guys work. Obviously we talked about on 4 Wide last night. They're going to try. I think it would be logical to try and take away Bowers. But with the other options Georgia has, at that position, it's going to be tough to limit Bowers without letting another guy, just sit wide open. And that's one of those keys is use these tight ends early and often. And, another one that kind of went hand in hand with what we were talking about earlier is we want to control first down. First and second down, you want to control the third downs for the most part. You want to keep those short to medium third downs because At the end of the day, you want a strong first and second. It's cliche, but if you want to see it in action and see what it did for Georgia, go watch the Michigan game. They controlled third down because they had strong first and second down plays. Todd Monken was in his bag for 4 quarters that game.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm just now catching up on what you were doing with Stoddard. Yeah,
he's a free man
right.
now. He's a free man.
No, you're absolutely right. You want to make sure that on first down and second down you having very productive plays to where you're making third down manageable should you get to them, and then being able to convert on third downs is extremely it's extremely important to do. You want to be able to stay ahead of the chains, and because if you're in second and short or first and second and short and third and short, you have your whole playbook available. Whereas if you're in second long and third and long constantly, you're limiting what you're able to do, and then it makes you more one dimensional. And that's what Georgia wants to do. Georgia wants to make Oregon one dimensional. So the way that you do that is you've got to win first and second down, and that's a great point by you. And I think Todd Monken. We've seen the multiplicity of this offense, and we've seen his creative designs. And I think that's one of the things I like most about Monken. And I know there's some other coordinators who are extremely brilliant and do some really good things, but I'm really glad that Monken has evolved here at Georgia the way that he has, and has been allowed to start factoring a lot of the things that he wants to do. I mean, he even said in his press conference, and it was really amazing to hear from Todd Monken because I'd never heard him speak before. Him even come out and say, I love throwing the football. I wish I could throw the football every play. I love throwing the football, but I know we have to run. And I think he's done a great job since he's been here of balance. And balance is key, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And with that, let's get into kind of the last part of this before we already voiced predictions, but I am going – we might as well repeat them because this is what everyone's coming here for. Everyone's coming here for the Georgia-specific content. If you didn't watch Fort White Podcast, we showed you where to go. Showed you where to subscribe. Go check it out. Dan, defensively, Georgia's young, a lot younger than Georgia's been in a long time, I would say, for a few years. Because you've had all these older veterans come back to try and go get that elusive national championship, which they finally got this year. So goal accomplished, mission successful. Let's talk about what we want to see on defense this year, Dan. What do you want to see game one with a young defense as young as Georgia's going to be?
So one of the biggest concerns that most people have when you have young, inexperienced players, they're thinking too much and they don't react naturally and they move slower. So what I would love to see from this defense is them to play free, play loose, move quickly, think less, act more. And that's what I want to say, is that I want to see these guys just play. They're so talented. They have so much athletic ability. I don't want to see them paralysis by analysis where they're thinking so much that they're a step slow to the ball. I don't want to see that. And if we do see that, the paralysis by analysis where they're overthinking everything, they're playing slow, then we could be in for a game much deeper into this game than probably should be, because we have the talent advantage. It's just that they're young. So you've got to be able to turn them loose, Kirby, and just let them dogs eat. And I think they will. And, you have one of your things here is, can we pressure Bo Nix? We have so many different ways to do it. And Bo Nix can run a little bit. He can really sling it. He's not a bad quarterback. And I know that everybody, the fashionable thing is to say Bo Nix is terrible. He's not terrible, okay? It's just he's not clutch. I mean, I'll say that. He's not clutch. And I think if we hit him early and often and get in his head a little bit, I think we can have a real advantage there.
And that's something they've done really successful in the past, at least, looking at the last 3 years, is when they're sending those pressures and they're really getting in his head, he looks like a deer in headlights at times because they're sending all of those pressures and they really keep him on his toes as to what's coming next. And as Robert says here, he believes that Schumann will keep it simple and that will help a ton. Absolutely. I'm really interested in seeing, whether these concepts that they run, all these simulated pressures that they had where they're walking up, all 3 linebackers to the line of scrimmage with 3 down linemen and saying, hey, you better be ready because we might send all 6 of them and they're going to be coming after your behind. I made sure not to curse because I know Jeremiah and Jonathan got on me about that. Sorry about that, guys. I improved. But yeah, I am really interested to see how they do that. Can they do it? And really, the defense, the front seven as a whole is what I'm watching specifically. And no, you can't really do it on television, on the TV copy, as Brooks says all the time, because you really can't see them all that much. But, are they getting pressure? Are those linebackers reacting the right way when it's run and pass? Can they identify it and move like Dan said? Less thinking, just move and go to where you let your instincts lead you. And that was something that set apart a Nakobe Dean, a Quay Walker, a Channing Tindall from the rest of the linebackers in college football last year. Georgia had one of the best, probably the best inside linebacking core I've seen of all time.
Well, and the other thing too is Kirby even mentioned this in his press conference, is that the one thing we don't know is how people are going to respond to adversity, how they're going to respond when they make a mistake. He's like, every football player, he said, I have never coached a football player that hasn't gotten beat on a play, but it's how they respond to that is what makes you a good player, right? So we know there's going to be a busted play. Guys, just be prepared for it. There's going to be a busted play. There's going to be a mistake. Hopefully it doesn't cost us big time, but there's going to be a mistake. But how do these players respond to that? Do they get right back up on the horse and just keep riding? Or do they let it just swell in their head and then just take them out of the game? I don't think that that's going to happen on a Kirby Smart defense. I think these guys have been coached hard enough not to be that like a petulant little child and just throw a hissy fit. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that these guys are going to do extremely well. Again, Oregon has the most experienced offensive line in college football. That doesn't mean they're the most talented. They're just the most experienced. But that is a real advantage, at least early in the football game. I would anticipate that Oregon's going to have a good first drive. I would be very shocked if Georgia comes out, gets a 3-and-out right away. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think that Oregon's going to have a really good first drive. That would be my guess. And then it's just, what does Georgia do to settle in after that?
And with that being said, Dan, it is prediction time. I know you had 24 hours because we gave you an organic, no warning reaction or prediction last night. Dan, if you want to repeat that and give some of your reasons as to why, what do you have going down in Mercedes at 3:30?
At the end of the day, I just think it's a little bit too much too early for Dan Lanning. I think he has the potential to be a really good coach, but if we're being truthful, a lot of assistant coaches don't pan out to be great head coaches right away. But it's all about the opportunity, and that's something that we learned from Kirby Smart, which he passed on a lot of different opportunities for the right opportunity. Mark Richt at Florida State was the same way, passed on a ton of opportunities for the right opportunity. So Oregon is a really good football team. Mario Cristobal, whether you like him or not, as a football coach, did a good job of building up that program. Not to say that they were down necessarily, but he sustained that program. And I think Dan Lanning is walking into a very successful situation where he has all the ability to be extremely successful. I just think this is a little bit too early for him to come in and get like a monumental upset. Now, if he were able to do that, you talk about one hell of a jump start to a career. My gosh. I mean, you'll start seeing him in all these top coaching things right away. I mean, how ridiculous that would be, but you'd see it. I really think this is an opportunity for Georgia to get out quick, get out early, get up big, and then probably coast to a win, much to the chagrin of so many Georgia fans that want to see us score 90 points every single week. But I'm honestly thinking 35-10, somewhere in that range. I think that sounds about right to me. That will cover the spread, not embarrass anybody. And I know Kirby says that he doesn't think about stuff like that, but he does. I mean, you can see it. He calls off the dogs.
Absolutely. And I no surprise if you watch the 4 wide, I had Georgia up. I had Georgia winning 28-17, and I actually put in maybe it is bold prediction. I had Georgia scoring at least one defensive touchdown. I think it's probably going to be pick 6. And what a way it would be to start the season off if we start the season off with a pick 6 for the first touchdown of the year, as they did last year, and as also they ended it with a pick 6. That would be awesome. Guys, if you haven't already, go follow Dan Kiley on Twitter at DanKiley3. You can follow me at Harris Marino. You can also go follow at at 4 White Pod on Twitter. Make sure you go follow. And as we closed you out yesterday, I want to give you a little sneak peek behind the scenes into what that 4 Wide Pod is all about and how we opened it, because there's not a better intro in this business right now for a podcast, guys. I'm going to send you out on a good note, a little throwback to episode 50.
I see we have we're calling an audible. Oh, we're going 4 wide. It's happening. It's happening.
Yes, that is right. It is the 4 Wide Podcast, Monday nights at 8 p.m. Guys, you can find the Top Dog Talk podcast live every Tuesday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Times. We'll see you next Tuesday.
And don't forget to check out Classic City Sports tomorrow night, 8 o'clock.
Hell yes. Go follow them. Go check them out. Go watch their show. They are doing, I know they're doing an Oregon preview, but they got a lot of different things that make their show unique. Go check them out. It is going to be an interesting week, guys. I wish you luck. Hope Saturday night is awesome. Enjoy your Labor Day weekend. We'll see you back next Tuesday here on the Top Dog Talk podcast.